Now, before I go into the next podcast, I just want to throw this in right now because I can, because I really just want to use this as a time capsule for me in the future. Can I just talk about how much I love these boys? They are so funny and heartwarming. Really good gents who sound so genuine and thoughtful.
Hello.
Hello. I've been a huge fan for a long time. You've gotten me through so many hours of work. It's been like 8 years since I found you guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're an OG.
I would say OG. I found you like in 2015, and you guys started in 2014. Like,
Pretty close. I'm counting that as OG.
Yeah, I actually found you on the Pop Quiz Hotshot podcast with Michael Williams.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a whole episode where he was asking you guys questions about trivia, curated specifically about Grown Ups 2 from the first season.
I'm just getting myself a water because I'm criminally hungover.
No,
for like 10 seconds. All right, Gimmick. Hi.
Hello. Just real quick, because I know you for a long time, but maybe the audience members who are hearing this or seeing this might not know. You are Tim Batt. You are a comedian who has done a really great podcast, this project called The Worst Idea of All Time. I don't know if you wanted to more than I could.
I just realized, based on the frame of people looking at the video, it looks like I've been taken hostage in Iraq by the Taliban, and this is a video that I have to release to try and obtain my freedom. But I will say my captors are treating me very well, Joe Biden. The podcast is me and my friend Guy Montgomery, who's a fellow stand-up comedian. We do a movie review podcast, but the twist is the movie very rarely changes. So we watch and review the same movie over and over again, week after week for a whole year. And we did Grown Ups 2 to start off with in 2014. We've watched both Sex and the City films 52 times a piece. And I tell you what, it's no good. It's no good. It's a concept. Those are no good as movies.
The thing about the podcast that I really enjoy is that you get to slowly watch you guys fall into insanity. And I saw you on the I think the most recent episode, you guys were talking about how it's a challenge because sometimes you're not always in the mood to hang out, but you have to. And a lot of podcasts don't acknowledge that entirely. And this podcast is made a little more intense, constantly having to rewatch these movies. I know for a fact how hard it is to carry someone through an episode while trying to make it seem like everything's fun and everything's nice. But with this podcast, it seems kind of like the point to talk about the energy and conditions of each watch. How do both of you handle that?
Well, I actually don't. I think Guy and I always want to hang out, but we frequently do not want to watch, as is this season, a Fast and Furious movie first. So I think the trepidation that Guy voiced in a recent episode is more around the whole recording process, the main part of which is watching this terrible movie. But I genuinely think both of us, with very few exceptions, and like a couple come to mind, but they were years ago, and I can get into the specifics. But we both really look forward to recording because that's just us shooting the shit. And, we're good buddies and we love hanging out with each other. The exceptions to that would be, for example, I can remember distinctly when Guy went to Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival in Scotland, which is like the complete opposite time zone to New Zealand. And I'm pretty sure it was season 2, maybe 1. And I can remember like getting up at 3 a.m. on my birthday to talk to this motherfucker because he could not figure out a sensible time in his day that would like fit with mine. So I was just up in the middle of the night whispering into a microphone to him so that I wouldn't wake my housemates. And that was a dastardly situation. But apart from that, we love hanging out. We just hate these movies.
I mean, that's the whole point of, each watch is such a different experience. Like, in the last episode, you said that you were up for 36 hours before you even started the watch. And do you have any like recollection of a specific experience that was just overall the worst one that you've ever had to deal with? Just going through, it was just because I've heard a lot of bad experiences with you guys going through these movies.
I mean, a lot of the Sex and the City 2 ones, just by virtue of that movie, not any context apart from the fact that like this is the 30th, 40th, 50th time I've had to watch Carrie Bradshaw drag her fucking friends through her problems while they traipse around being pretty fucking racist, to be honest, at least. I mean, they were tough. Nothing springs to mind, but just because it's constantly so annoying. It's just like, it's a big block of time. You know, every record, we've got to really block out about 3.5 to 4 hours to sit down, watch the movie, and talk. The technical stuff's pretty annoying because I've moved house sort of a few times recently, and my wife and I just bought our first home at the end of last year, and then we like immediately the house got flooded. So the garage, which is my sort of podcast studio, but we've had to cut up all of the plasterboard, and there's just been a series of impermanent situations where I've had to like suss out all the gear, and that's pretty fucking annoying.
I mean, I specifically remember one episode that I told myself I would tell you about, that I listened through the entirety of a one-sided conversation that you had because Guy's audio messed up, and I remember listening to that because I was at work when I was listening to that, and it felt like I was insane, like I was just hearing someone just talk and have this incredible conversation to no one. And I think that's one of the many problems that go with podcasting in general, but expecting more from that.
And I mean, you've got to try your best, and you've got to sort of earn those moments, because most of the time we get it right, but I can't even remember why I put that audio out. I think I tweeted about it, and I was like, well, guys, fucking audio doesn't work, and people were like, just release your side. Like, that's really stupid. I'll do that. So we did that. And like there's one episode which is kind of famous called Prawn Salad, where we just got super duper 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 high in season 1. It's like episode 29.
He's reacting to something. I can't remember exactly the lines. Actually,
similarly, Braden Higgins, David Splat's son, he was doing some really good acting in there.
Yeah.
His face was telling 1,000 stories.
Yeah.
It was like a body. His face was like the body of a dancer that was telling a story through dance. His face was dancing.
Holy shit! If you thought there was a little bit humorous to hear, you should have been seeing Guy's face with the conviction of their delivery right up until his face is dancing. What a fucking like lyrical visual journey you took me on forcibly.
Oh yeah.
Good God.
It's just that Braden Higgins' goddamn dancing face gets me every time.
I mean, Guy's just got the giggles the entire time. Finding it very hard to talk. And I almost didn't put that episode out because I was like, this is hot garbage. No one will want to hear this. But then it's most people's like favorite episode of all the episodes we've done. So you just never know.
I mean, is that such a weird thing? Because you've been making content for like more than a decade at this point, that you don't know what the fans want? Or do you feel like you have a good handle on what the fans expect from each episode, or what they would actually enjoy more?
I feel very unbeholden to what I feel a real sense of duty in terms of what we've promised. We will always do our very best to deliver that, but we will never think too hard about like what would they want the most. It's always like, what do we think is funny?
I mean, that's a good question into what you choose from each season, because the first one was Grown Ups 2. You hadn't seen the first Grown Ups. The second was Sex and the City 2. You hadn't seen that. Then it was We Are Your Friends. And yeah. What's the like mindset behind choosing each film for each season?
Well, that was quite childish actually, because everyone sort of assumed that it was a podcast where we watched sequels, like bad movie sequels. Yep. And we picked We Are Your Friends simply for the reason that it wasn't a sequel to anything and it doesn't have a sequel. It was just like, you fucking guys think you know what's going on? No, you don't. And I mean, we did a whole season watching the Emmanuel softcore pornographies because we just wanted to kind of like mix it up and change the format a little bit. And even the Fast and the Furious season we're doing right now, we're doing all the Fast and Furious movies, but in reverse order and watching 9 times, 8 times, 7, etc. And it's, I don't know, I think it just is to that point where we'll keep doing stuff that we think is funny and interesting, and we don't feel beholden to keeping the format set in stone. And I think at this point, you know, we get enough fan feedback to know that the majority of people will be with us. If we think it's funny, they'll probably enjoy it as well.
I remember whenever I try to like put this podcast on other people, because I'm the podcast guy in any of my friend groups, where I'm just like, I want you guys to listen to this so I have someone to talk about with it. Every time I tell them the premise, they're like, why don't they watch a good movie? Why don't they like analyze something? I'm like, that's not the point. Going back like years ago, you had someone on the podcast say, why don't you guys watch something like The Holy Mountain like over and over and over for a year? And I saw that movie and with a big film brain type dude, film buff, and I hated that movie and he got mad at me. And so I took that pettiness and I watched it every day for a month, and I would never do that again. There's not a chance. I specifically stole that from you guys just to throw it back in his face, and not a chance. There's nothing in the world that would make me do that.
It is an interesting thing to pick a little bit apart the movies that we select, because the point is finding mediocrity. That's the funny bit, because like Holy Mountain is a really interesting visual thing, and therefore in my head it's way less funny to keep watching that over and over again and talking about it. Like Grown Ups 2 was kind of perfect because it is a movie that absolutely shouldn't really be seen twice unless you're a child. And like I know that it's a bit of a family movie, so lots of kids will do that, and that's all good. But it is such a disposable, thoughtless, quickly produced film, and then to give that a rubric of a proper film critique is just like an absurd thing to do. And then to keep doing that's where the comedy comes from. So when people say like, why don't you do a good movie? My answer is always the same. That's not fucking funny. Like that's not a funny thing to do. That's just every other movie podcast that's out there. And guess what, guys? We're not film reviewers.
I mean, that brings up to a good point about when you did your YouTube Red pilot and you guys watched, what was it? Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. I was so, when I watched that for the first time, I was so happy with what you guys turned it into, and I was disappointed that it didn't get picked up for like more stuff. How did you handle the disappointment of that not going forward? And if it did go forward, did you have any more ideas to add to that?
Yeah, we really did. So to bring people up to speed, we made in 16, 17 maybe, a pilot episode of a show for YouTube where we basically adapted the podcast format to a visual medium, and we invented this thing called method film reviewing. So we would enter the world of the film to review it properly. So as a result, Guy was living in New York City at the time. I flew over there, and we both lived in a sewer in New York City for a week, and we could only eat pizza to review Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we like watched it and reviewed it 4 times a day for a week. It was very stupid. I'm really proud of that pilot. Like, I think it's a good, it's not perfect, but it's a good execution of the idea. You see like what it is.
I mean, it's so funny. The Sewer Gazette part still kills me. I rewatched it the other night, and that Sewer Gazette, when you come in and you guys are having little like shenanigans, like, yeah, check out this newspaper, and it's just on a paper plate that you found in the sewer that you wrote down.
Oh, that's so sweet, man.
Have you read this?
What is it?
It's today's paper.
The Sewer Gazette.
You're on page 2, though.
If my memory serves, that was just like while the cameras were setting up, I had a paper plate from the pizza, and I found a Sharpie and just started like writing things on it, and that's all that was.
That's such a good bit.
There's just all these little ideas that you just throw at the wall. But like, yeah, Guy is so funny in that pilot. You can see the pilots out there. So we had quite a few episodes roughly mapped out, or at least ideas for them. We were going to do Castaway and live like on some abandoned beach in Fiji somewhere. We were going to do Titanic in a shipping container. So we just had to like travel around in basically a cargo ship for a week and keep reviewing Titanic on that. I can't remember the other ones, but we had a pretty big list of ones to follow it up with. And it was disappointing because it was funny. And more than anything, to be honest, like, the narrative that I spin most of the time is that YouTube saw it and it was too weird for them to do a series order. But the truth is, it was actually the business unit itself stopped. Like YouTube read, we just got in at a really weird time and they commissioned it. And by the time we handed them the finished thing, they were wrapping that business unit up and they weren't commissioning series anymore. So we kind of got caught up in all that.
I mean, when I even went back to go watch it, I was like, oh yeah, YouTube Red. I forgot that was even a thing. So
it's very brief.
I don't think it'd be on you guys because that pilot I showed to a bunch of my friends because I was trying to get them into the podcast, and they're like, "That's hysterical. That is so the method filmmaking."
Thanks, man.
Especially because I tried the filmmaking thing, like film reviewer thing on YouTube, and you realize it's just a sea of people doing the same thing, and it's so hard to break out of that niche thing. And I think you guys did it really great. How do you guys handle the excitement about projects finally coming to light, and how do you handle projects that like maybe don't get handled correctly?
Luckily, up until recently, we kind of did everything ourselves. There wasn't a lot of other people involved, with the exception of that YouTube Red pilot, which is good and bad. The good is we sort of control every part of it, and you can't get too disappointed when you're the person fucking up or doing a good job. The flip side is it does really limit your capacity and what you can achieve. More recently, like Guy, for example, he's having a blinder of a year. He's got his own TV show at the moment.
The Spelling Bee. He's been trying to get that going for years.
Well, he sort of has had it going for years. It's just like growing and growing. Like it started as just a thing he was doing to keep himself sane during the lockdowns on Zoom, and he would stream it out, and lots of people tuned in. He was like, oh, okay. And so he did a couple live ones, and within a pretty short space of time, he actually managed to turn it into a TV show, and it's on New Zealand TV right now, which is just fantastic.
Oh, funnily enough, Matt, your word is coward.
So there's a cow in it?
Yeah. And remember, you can ask for a language of origin, a definition, and a sentence.
Use it in a sentence, please.
Good luck, you coward.
So when you're in comedy, when you're in the arts, if you're a writer, if you're an actor, whatever, like it is relentless doors shutting in your face, like all the time, and you just have to figure out how you're gonna deal with that. The way that I do it personally is I have kind of taught myself a lot of different things so I can sort of do like small projects myself as much as possible, and I don't have to like rely on getting funding for something or getting a big broadcaster involved to an actor. I'll just make like a shitty little version of it to show it's like either a proof of concept or just keep it that size. That's how I deal with it.
I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now with this project with Season of the Curse 2, which is it was this like stupid idea that we came up with a couple years ago, but now that we have more experience, we want to put a lot more effort into it. And that's the fundraiser, like, not to give away anything, it's more about networking and trying to build an audience than it is to actually get the funding. So I agree with you.
Well, that's why like to pull back the curtain a little bit, we've been trying to tee up this chat for a few days because I keep missing the time. Apologies for that. But I was keen to talk to you because when you sent me that video and I looked at it, I was like, fuck yeah, these dudes, this is the vibe. This is what we do, like this is the attitude. Just go out there and make some shit.
I don't mean to sound like a stalker or anything, but I've been a big fan of your career for a long time, and I used to watch like the Lou review that you and Guy started doing.
Oh, hell yeah.
13 out of 25 for the TV and
This is a number he's pulled out of the sky. This is crap. The 1 week, I'm actually quite keen to take this seriously.
13, ladies and gentlemen.
You don't even review the toilet. You don't even look for a Dyson Airblade.
There wasn't one.
Yeah, so put it in your review.
0 out of 5 for Dyson Airblades.
And now you've got like 10 different criteria.
Dude, I was such a big fan of the Lou review when I found that. And there was a sauna interview that you guys did with someone.
David Farrier.
David
Farrier he's a big deal now, man. He made this incredible documentary called Tickled.
Oh my God, yeah, I've seen Tickled, yeah.
That's him. He's that guy.
I still can't find that sauna interview, by the way. I've been trying to look. I was trying to show my partner the other day. I was like, they're so funny. There's this sauna interview, and then I sat there for like 2 hours looking for it, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, he only did, I think, 3 of those. But David was on. He's a journalist by trade, and he was on it was a late night news show, and he came up with this segment where he interviewed people in a sauna, and I think he only made 3, and then TV3 were like, "This is fucked up, dude. Stop doing it."
And it was so surprising to see all of these people that I've been listening to for years start like unfolding and making it into the industry. Like Rose Matafeo, when she popped up on Taskmaster, and I was like, "Oh my God, Boners of the Heart!" I remember when you guys did.
Oh, that's so cool.
Hot not magnetic.
And did you say schmagnetic?
No, I agree with her.
Okay, so
Pause, I agree with
Group
her.
pause.
Oh yeah.
So he's good looking, but you don't think he's got charisma?
No, not good looking, but he has charisma because he died. Okay.
Yeah, I remember when you guys did those podcasts together, and then I saw her in a Paul Williams music video that he did like years ago when I found his surf music stuff. But as your like content journey / podcast journey, how has it gone like in your emotional state from going to a spot where no one's listening to people listening? And does that affect you in any way, or does it ebb and flow with hype? Do people continuously grow with listening to it, or does it just like sink and swim every time?
We were very strangely lucky early on. We got some weird early breaks. Like we started doing the podcast very much to no one. It was just our friends listening to us talking, and not even that many, because podcasts were kind of not very widely known, and they could just talk to us if they want to hear our voices. But we got a shout out on a How Did This Get Made mini episode when we were in season 1, like about midway through. And just that little mention, because someone on a forum had found us on the what's it called? What's the studio? Earwolf, on the Earwolf forums. And so Paul Scheer read that out on the podcast, and he mentioned the name because they did in the comment, and that was enough to like throw, a few hundred people started listening. So it was like, that's a weird idea for a podcast. I'll tune in and see what that sounds like. And then off the back of that, we got an interview with a guy from Vice, and then that popped up on Vice.com, like on the front page briefly. So that all happened in season 1, which kind of built our audience, and it was just dumb luck, really, that did it. So since season 1, we've always had, at least a bit of an audience listening, especially in America. We are always super grateful and respectful of the audience, and we're mindful of them right in the back of our head. But if you're thinking about them listening, you can't do anything. So we very much, I don't know, it's a weird juggling act to do mentally, but there's a mode that you click into, and it just comes with time, I think. I sort of learned it because I come from a radio background as well, where you have to ignore the fact that anyone can hear you, because otherwise you'll just trip yourself up. And you're able to click into a mode where you don't say stupid things because you're on a mic, but you also kind of forget that there's anyone listening. So I don't know, it's a hard thing, but that's the way that we've always operated. It's just Guy and I talking to each other, and then we just happen to upload that conversation, really.
The final question I have is, because you've been doing this for such a long time, do you find any sentimental aspects to specific seasons? Do you find this more of a time capsule of certain times in your life, more than you would have maybe when you first started?
Yeah, I mean, I don't revisit it personally, and Guy's never listened to a single episode of our podcast.
Really?
Famously. Yeah. He's like, why would I? I was there.
Yep.
Like, wow.
I lived it. That's my favorite thing that people, why would I go back and re-listen to it? I lived it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, not to sound like dicks as well, but we've got other shit to do. Like we're very, we're on to the next thing constantly. So honestly, we don't have a ton of time to. I don't have a lot of time to listen to other people's podcasts that I want to listen to. I'm definitely not going to listen to my one after it's done. But it is cool that it exists as the closest thing, really, that I've got to a journal. And I think that's what people connect to is they tune in. It's a funny idea. Guy and I are like, funny enough that you can stay on. But the real hook is that we've put out so many hours of content now that you really get to know us and sort of walk the journey with us across the years, which is, that builds a pretty strong relationship with people. And we're very, very respectful of that, I think. We're very mindful of that. I do just want to say something before we wrap up, though, about sort of the previous question, because this is something I think is really important for creators to maybe consider. The approach that I always have with everything that I make is that I am doing it as a test, basically. I'm doing it as a test to figure something out. So, we started doing Worst Idea because I knew a little bit about audio stuff from radio, and I wanted to figure out how podcasting works. So it's the best way to figure out how that works is I'll just make something, and then I'll make all the mistakes and figure out how it works and all of that. But I never, ever make anything with the intention for it to be successful or big or have a big audience. I always approach it just from a point of view of I'll have a play with this thing to figure out how these tools work. And I think if you go in with that mindset of you're just there to learn how to do something, that's a healthy way to do it rather than chasing big audiences. And it's just, I personally just think it's too hard to try and figure out what the internet wants or a real life audience. So if you kind of just approach things from a point of view of, I enjoy doing this thing, I would like to figure out filmmaking. I want to figure out how cameras work. How do I get the best picture out of this? How do I achieve good sound? Well, the best way for me to figure that out is I'll make a short film. So I'll write it and I'll get some friends involved and I'll shoot it and I'll edit it. And through that process, you'll learn all of those aspects: camera operation, video editing, sound. And, if you just keep doing that, you're accidentally going to get good at filmmaking because you're going to learn all the mistakes and what worked and what didn't. And that's how I approach these things. And I think that's probably a healthy way to avoid the disappointment of not everything you do being super successful.
See, to actually tie that back into the fundraiser for Season of the Curse too, Season of the Cursed, the first one, we had a song called Venture, and the whole premise of the thing is called You Can't Spell Adventure Without Venture, which is if you want to have an adventure, you have to go do it. You have to go into it. And the song sucks. And it's completely fine, but that's the point of the song, because the first 2 times we do the chorus in it, the audio is baked, and then the third time it's magic. And I love that aspect because you just got to keep trying, and eventually maybe it's good. And would you say that you attribute your successes to your failures because you went and tried and failed or succeeded?
Yeah, the language is slightly negative, but I think you're right. I think what you're saying is probably correct. I'll tell you, I would frame it this way. I attribute my successes to just trying, just giving stuff a go. Wayne Gretzky quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Just keep throwing shit out there. And people often because I've got a list of credits of stuff that I've made, and people often rattle it off and they're like, you're so successful. And it's kind of like, well, I guess so, but you've no idea how many things haven't got off the ground. I'm trying to do shit all the time that doesn't work, doesn't get funded, doesn't get produced. I get halfway through it, it falls over for whatever reason. You just got to keep chucking seeds out there. That's all.
Do you have a project or something you've been super excited about, but you just can't get it out there or something like that's been stuck?
The YouTube Red thing, I really for a while was disappointed that I couldn't get another TV production company or broadcaster rather in New Zealand interested enough to engage with that, because I genuinely think it's such a good idea. But I also kind of think that ship might have sailed now that Guy and I have both got kids. I think it just makes it so much harder to pull off something with that time commitment.
Oh, that's why I don't have kids, because then I can do things that will constantly not be appreciated. That's kind of my goal.
Yeah. Good reason.
Well, I'm just gonna say this one last time. Thank you so much for this is not to overstate it or anything, but it's been a dream talking to you. I've listened to you for years, so I greatly appreciate you coming up and talking to me.
Oh, thank you very much, man. It's been a delight. I'm incredibly hungover, but I've enjoyed this chat so much nonetheless. I appreciate the thoughtful questions and really appreciate you listening for ages. That's cool.
Well, you are a trooper, you're a soldier, and I hope you go get some rest and drink up lots of fluids.
Nice one. Thanks, dude.
All right, man. I'll see you later.